There was a time when a bottle of vinegar, a box of baking soda, and a little common sense could solve just about any household problem. My grandmother raised 4 children through depression and never once called a repairman or bought a specialized cleaning product she didn't absolutely need. Her kitchen cupboard was her hardware store, and somehow everything in her house worked better and lasted longer than anything I own today. I've been collecting these tricks for years, writing them down before they disappeared completely. What I found is that these aren't just cute old-fashioned ideas. They actually work better than most of the expensive solutions we buy today. I'm sharing 30 of my grandmother's best household hacks, the ones I still use myself. And I guarantee at least half of these will surprise you. Toothpaste for scratches on glass and wood. Small scratches on glass tables or wooden furniture don't need to mean expensive repairs. My grandmother would squeeze a little bit of regular white toothpaste onto a soft cloth, not the gel kind, just plain white paste. She'd rub it into the scratch in small circular motions for about a minute, then wipe it away with a damp cloth. The mild abrasives in toothpaste are just rough enough to smooth out fine scratches without causing more damage. I've used this on my glass coffee table, on my phone screen, on wooden dresser tops. It doesn't fix deep gouges, but for surface scratches that catch the light wrong, it makes them much less noticeable. Sometimes you have to do it twice, but that's still cheaper and easier than refinishing furniture or replacing glass. Just make sure you're using plain toothpaste, not anything with whitening beads or sparkles. Lemon in the microwave. If your microwave smells like a mix of popcorn, spaghetti sauce, and regret, here's what my grandmother did. Cut a lemon in half. Squeeze the juice into a microwave-safe bowl with about a cup of water. Then drop the lemon halves right in there with it. Microwave it on high for 3 to 5 minutes until the water is boiling and steam is coating the inside. Don't open the door right away. Let that lemony steam sit in there for another 2 or 3 minutes to loosen all the dried food and grease. When you open it, you can wipe everything away with a damp cloth. No scrubbing, no harsh chemicals, no elbow grease required. The stuck-on food just comes right off. Plus, the whole kitchen smells like fresh lemons instead of chemical cleaner. I do this every couple weeks, and my microwave has never looked better. Potatoes against rust. This one sounds completely made up until you try it. If you got rust spots on kitchen knives, garden tools, or any metal surface, cut a raw potato in half and dip the cut side in dish soap or baking soda. Then scrub the rusted area with a potato like it's a sponge. For stubborn rust, push the potato against a spot and let it sit there for a few minutes. The oxalic acid in potatoes actually breaks down rust. My grandmother used this on her good kitchen knives to keep them from developing rust spots near the handle. I tried it on an old cast iron pan I found at a yard sale, and I couldn't believe how much rust came off. You'll go through a couple potato halves if the rust is bad, but it works better than steel wool and doesn't scratch the metal underneath. Rinse and dry everything thoroughly when you're done. Coffee filters for cleaning windows. Paper towels leave lint, and old rags leave streaks. Coffee filters don't leave either one. My grandmother would mix equal parts vinegar and water in a spray bottle, spray down the windows, and wipe them clean with coffee filters. The filters are made from tightly woven paper that doesn't shed fibers, and they're just absorbent enough to soak up the cleaner without dripping everywhere. I was skeptical the first time I tried this, but my windows have never been clearer. No streaks, no lint, no mess. You can also use coffee filters to clean mirrors, TV screens, and eyeglasses. I buy the cheap basket filters in bulk, and they work just as well as expensive microfiber cloths. My grandmother was cleaning windows this way in the 60s, and I still haven't found a better method. Vinegar to remove limescale. Hard water leaves crusty white buildup on everything. Kettles, coffee makers, shower heads, faucets. My grandmother never bought descaling products. She used plain white vinegar. For a kettle, fill it halfway with equal parts vinegar and water. Bring it to a boil, then turn it off and let it sit for an hour. Dump it out, rinse thoroughly, and boil plain water once or twice to get rid of any vinegar taste. For shower heads, she'd unscrew it if possible and soak in the bowl of vinegar overnight. If it couldn't be removed, she'd fill a plastic bag with vinegar, secure it around the shower head with a rubber band, and leave it there. The acetic acid in vinegar dissolves limescale like magic. The next morning, the water flows better, the kettle heats faster, and everything looks cleaner. I've saved so much money not buying those expensive descaling packets. Vinegar does the same job for pennies. Razor against pilling on sweaters. Those little fabric pills that show up on sweaters make them look worn out even when they're barely used. My grandmother would take a cheap disposable razor and gently shave the pills off, moving the razor in one direction with a light touch. The razor catches the pills without cutting the main fabric. She'd lay the sweater flat on a table, pull the fabric tight, and work in small sections. Takes about 5 minutes per sweater, but they look brand new when you're done. I do this to all my wool sweaters at the end of winter before I pack them away. Saves me from having to replace perfectly good sweaters that just look a little fuzzy. Just be careful not to press too hard, and always shave in the same direction. If you go back and forth, you risk snagging the fabric. Milky spore for Japanese beetles in gardens. Japanese beetles would destroy a garden faster than just about any other pest. They eat roses, grapes, vegetables, everything. My grandmother didn't spray pesticides because she didn't want chemicals on her food. Instead, she used something called Milky spore powder. You sprinkle it on the lawn and garden beds, water it in lightly, and it goes to work. Milky spore is a naturally occurring bacteria that infects the grubs living in your soil, the larvae that turn into Japanese beetles. Once it's established, it keeps working for 10 to 20 years. The beetles can't complete their life cycle because the grubs die before they mature. My grandmother put this down once in the early 70s, and she never had a serious beetle problem again. I used it in my yard 3 years ago, and I've seen a huge reduction in beetles every summer. It's not a quick fix. Takes a season or two to really work, but once it does, you're done. No more spraying every week. Old newspapers against trash smell. Trash can get disgusting fast. Even with a liner, they develop that sour, wet smell because liquid leaks through and sits in the bottom. My grandmother lined the bottom of every trash can with several sheets of newspaper before putting the bag in. The newspaper absorbs any liquid that leaks through, which means no smell and no slimy buildup. When she emptied the trash, she'd toss the old newspaper and put down fresh sheets. It took 5 seconds and saved her from scrubbing out trash cans constantly. I started doing this in my kitchen trash can, and the difference is incredible. No more rinsing out the can every week. No more smell when you open the lid. The newspaper catches everything before it becomes a problem. If you don't get a physical newspaper, those grocery store flyers work just as well. Citric acid against gray-white clothes. White laundry turns gray over time from mineral buildup and detergent residue. Bleach can damage fabric and yellow it even more. My grandmother used citric acid instead. You can buy it in the canning section of most grocery stores. She'd add 1 or 2 tablespoons of citric acid powder to the wash along with her regular detergent. For really gray items, she'd dissolve a 1/4 cup of citric acid in hot water and soak the clothes for an hour before washing. The citric acid breaks down the minerals and residue that cause a gray color, and it also helps clean your washing machine at the same time. I do this with my white sheets and towels every few washes, and they stay bright. It's gentler than bleach, cheaper than special whitening products, and actually works. Milk against fruit stains. Berry stains and cherry juice on fabric are stubborn because they're essentially plant dyes. Water doesn't touch them, and regular stain removers often make them worse. My grandmother would pour whole milk into a bowl, submerge the stained part of the fabric, and let it soak for several hours, sometimes overnight. The proteins and fats in milk bind to the stained molecules and pull them out of the fabric. In the morning, she'd rinse it out and wash it normally. The stain would be gone completely. I've used this on white tablecloths after summer dinners when someone knocked over their strawberry shortcake. Works on cotton, linen, even light-colored polyester blends. Just make sure you're using real milk, not skim or almond milk. You need the fat content. And don't let it sit so long that the milk goes sour, or you'll have a different problem. I used to remove chewing gum. Gum stuck in carpet, on clothing, in hair. It's one of those things that makes you want to cut it out and deal with the damage. Don't. My grandmother would grab a few ice cubes, Put them in a plastic bag and hold the bag against the gum until it froze completely hard. Once it's frozen, it becomes brittle and stops being sticky. You can crack it off in pieces with your fingers or scrape it away with a butter knife. Works on fabric, carpet, upholstery, even hardwood floors. I've used this on my car floor mats, on my son's school pants, on the carpet in the living room. The key is patience. You have to let the gum freeze all the way through, which takes a few minutes. But once it's frozen, it comes right off without leaving a stain or pulling fibers out. Baking soda against sweat odor. Sometimes clothes smell like sweat even after washing, especially synthetic workout shirts or dress shirts with stubborn underarm odor. Washing again doesn't help because the bacteria causing the smell are embedded in the fabric. My grandmother would mix 2 tablespoons of baking soda with enough water to make a paste, rub that paste into the smelly areas, and let it sit for at least 30 minutes before washing. Baking soda is alkaline, which kills odor-causing bacteria and neutralizes the acids in sweat. The shirt comes out actually clean, not just perfumed. I do this with all my husband's work shirts before washing, and they smell genuinely fresh instead of like sweat covered up with detergent scent. For really bad odors, let the paste sit for a couple of hours or even overnight. Vinegar instead of fabric softener. Fabric softener is expensive, full of chemicals, and it builds up in your washing machine over time. My grandmother poured white vinegar into the fabric softener dispenser instead, about half a cup per load. It softens clothes naturally, removes soap residue, and keeps your washing machine clean by preventing limescale buildup. Your clothes won't smell like vinegar when they come out. The scent disappears as they dry. They just smell clean. I switched to vinegar 5 years ago, and my towels are softer, my clothes feel better, and I've saved hundreds of dollars. Plus, my washing machine runs better because there's no gunk building up inside. If you really want scent, add a few drops of essential oil to the vinegar before you pour it in. But honestly, I prefer clothes that just smell like nothing. Adding salt to milk to extend shelf life. Before reliable refrigeration, keeping milk fresh was a challenge. Even now, once you open a carton, you've got about a week before it starts to turn. My grandmother would stir a tiny pinch of salt into milk after opening it. Salt is a natural preservative that slows bacterial growth without affecting the taste if you use just a small amount. I'm talking about 1/8 of a teaspoon for a half gallon, barely noticeable. The milk would stay fresh a few days longer than usual. I've tried this with mixed results depending on how cold my fridge is, but it does seem to help. Just don't add too much or your milk will taste salty. This works better for milk you're using in cooking or cereal rather than drinking straight. Removing rust with lemon and salt. This is similar to the potato method, but works even better on larger rusted areas. Sprinkle coarse salt generously over the rusted metal. Then cut a lemon in half and squeeze the juice all over the salt. Let that combination sit for about 2 hours. The citric acid from the lemon reacts with the rust, while the salt acts as an abrasive. After it's sat long enough, scrub the area with the leftover lemon rind or a brush. The rust comes off in flakes, leaving cleaner metal underneath. My grandmother used this on old garden tools, rusty hinges, metal furniture. I've used it on vintage tools I've picked up at estate sales. It takes more time than chemical rust removers, but it doesn't require any toxic products and it gets the job done. Just make sure you rinse and dry the metal completely afterward so it doesn't rust again. Hairspray against ink stains. Ballpoint pen ink on clothing feels like a permanent disaster. My grandmother kept cheap aerosol hairspray in the laundry room just for this. As soon as someone got ink on their shirt, she laid the fabric over a towel. Spray hairspray directly onto the stain until it was soaked and let it sit for a minute. The alcohol in the hairspray dissolves the ink. Then she'd blot it with a clean cloth, working from the outside of the stain toward the center so it didn't spread. Most of the ink would transfer to the cloth. She'd repeat the process until no more ink came up, then wash the item normally. I've saved dress shirts, school uniforms, couch cushions this way. The trick is acting fast before the ink sets. Old hairspray works better than new fancy formulas because it has more alcohol. Keep a cheap can in your laundry room. Using vinegar to peel eggs easier. Hard-boiled eggs with shells that won't come off are frustrating. You end up with pock-marked eggs that look terrible for deviled eggs or salads. My grandmother would add about a tablespoon of white vinegar to the water before boiling the eggs. The vinegar makes the shell slightly more porous, which allows the egg white to separate from the shell more easily. She'd also start the eggs in cold water, bring them to a boil, then turn off the heat and let them sit for 12 minutes before plunging them into ice water. Between the vinegar and the ice bath, the shells practically fell off. I've been making hard-boiled eggs this way for years, and I rarely have problems anymore. The eggs peel clean in just a few seconds without tearing the whites. Sprinkling cinnamon to prevent mold on seedlings, 70 seconds. Seedlings are vulnerable to a fungal disease called damping off, which causes them to rot at the soil line and die. Chemical fungicides work, but they're not something you want on vegetables you're going to eat. My grandmother would sprinkle ground cinnamon lightly over the soil surface after planting seeds, or right when seedlings emerged. Cinnamon is a natural antifungal. It creates a protective barrier that prevents fungal spores from taking hold. She grew all her vegetables from seed, and she rarely lost seedlings to disease. I started doing this in my seed trays, and I've had much better germination rates. Just dust it on lightly. You don't need much. A little cinnamon goes a long way, and it doesn't hurt the plants at all. Using cornstarch as dry shampoo on days when your hair is greasy but you don't have time to wash it, cornstarch works as well as expensive dry shampoo. My grandmother would sprinkle a small amount of cornstarch onto her fingertips and work it into her roots and any oily areas. Then she'd wait a minute or two for the cornstarch to absorb the oil and brush it out thoroughly. Her hair would look cleaner and have more volume. I keep a small container of cornstarch in my bathroom for this exact purpose. If you have dark hair, you can mix in a little cocoa powder so it's not so white. Cornstarch costs next to nothing compared to dry shampoo spray, and it works just as well without any aerosol chemicals or artificial fragrance. Clarifying broth with egg whites. Restaurant quality broth is perfectly clear, almost like amber glass. Homemade broth usually comes out cloudy from proteins and fat. My grandmother would clarify her broth by whisking 2 or 3 egg whites until they were frothy, then stirring them into the simmering broth. She let it cook gently for about 15 minutes without stirring. The egg whites attract and bind to all the tiny particles that make broth cloudy, forming a raft on the surface. Then she carefully strained the whole thing through cheesecloth, leaving behind the egg whites and impurities. The broth would come out crystal clear and beautiful. I do this when I'm making soup for company and want it to look elegant. It's an extra step, but the difference is dramatic. You end up with broth that looks professional without any special equipment. Rinsing hair with vinegar for shine. Hair products build up over time, leaving hair dull and weighed down. My grandmother would mix 1 part apple cider vinegar with 3 parts cool water and use it as a final rinse after shampooing and conditioning. She'd pour it over her hair, let it sit for a minute, then rinse it out with cool water. The acidity closes the hair cuticle and removes residue from styling products and hard water minerals. Her hair would dry shinier and smoother without feeling heavy. I do this about once a week, and it makes a noticeable difference. Don't worry about the vinegar smell. It disappears completely as your hair dries. Just make sure you dilute it properly. Straight vinegar is too harsh. Baking soda in the drain. Slow. Smelly drains don't always need a plumber or harsh chemical drain cleaners. My grandmother would pour half a cup of baking soda down the drain, follow it with a cup of white vinegar, and let it fizz for about 15 minutes. The chemical reaction helps break up minor clogs and deodorizes the pipes. After 15 minutes, she'd flush it with a kettle of boiling water. The drain would run faster and smell clean. I do this in my kitchen and bathroom sinks once a month as preventive maintenance. It keeps drains flowing smoothly without ever needing drain cleaner. For tougher clogs, you might need to repeat it or use a plunger, but for general maintenance and odor control, this works great. Treating dry lips with honey. Chapped lips in winter are painful, and most lip balms just sit on the surface without actually healing anything. My grandmother would dab a little bit of raw honey on her lips before bed and leave it there overnight. Honey is naturally antibacterial and deeply moisturizing. It actually heals cracked skin instead of just coating it. By morning, her lips would be noticeably softer. I started doing this when my lips get really bad, and it works better than any lip balm I've ever bought. During the day, you can apply honey for 10 or 15 minutes and wipe it off before you go out. Just make sure you're using real honey, not the processed corn syrup stuff in a bear-shaped bottle. Tea bag for greasy dishes. After frying or cooking greasy food, dishes can be a nightmare. My grandmother would toss a used black tea bag into the greasy pan, add hot water, and let it soak for about 10 minutes. The tannins in black tea break down grease naturally, making it easier to wash. When she came back, the grease would wipe away easily with just a sponge. I keep used tea bags on the counter for this exact purpose now. It sounds strange, but it genuinely works. The tea somehow emulsifies the grease so it doesn't stick as stubbornly. Just make sure you're using plain black tea, not anything with milk or sugar already in it. Herbal tea doesn't work as well because it doesn't have the tannins. Tightening skin with egg whites. This was my grandmother's version of a face mask. She'd separate an egg white, whip it lightly with a fork until it was foamy, and spread it on her face, avoiding the eye area. She'd let it dry for about 10 or 15 minutes. As it dries, it tightens and temporarily firms the skin. Then she'd rinse it off with warm water and pat her face dry. Her skin would look smoother and tighter for a few hours. I do this before special occasions when I want my skin to look its best. It's not a permanent solution, but for a temporary tightening effect, it works remarkably well. Just be prepared for your face to feel tight, and you won't be able to talk or smile much while it's drying. Chalk against grease stains. Grease splatter on clothes happens constantly in the kitchen. The faster you treat it, the better chance you have of getting it out. My grandmother would grab a piece of white chalk and rub it directly on the grease stain before throwing the item in the wash. Chalk is absorbent and pulls grease out of fabric fibers. She'd really coat the stain with chalk dust, let it sit for a few minutes to absorb as much oil as possible, then brush off the excess and wash as usual. Most of the time, the stain would be completely gone. I keep chalk in my laundry room specifically for this. It works on oil-based stains too, like salad dressing or car grease. Just plain white blackboard chalk. Nothing fancy. The fork trick for hanging pictures. Hanging pictures straight without help from another person is nearly impossible. You're holding the frame, trying to find the nail, hoping you don't scratch the wall. My grandmother would slide a fork under the picture wire with the tines pointing up, then use the fork to guide the wire onto the nail. The fork holds the weight of the picture and lets you position it exactly where you want it. Once it's hooked, you just slide the fork out. The picture hangs perfectly straight on the first try. I've used this trick dozens of times. It's especially helpful for heavy frames or pictures hanging high on the wall where you can't see what you're doing. Just grab a regular table fork, and suddenly hanging pictures becomes a one-person job. Dish soap plus baking soda against grease. Baked on grease in pans and casserole dishes is stubborn. Soaking doesn't help much, and scrubbing wears you out. My grandmother would mix a couple tablespoons of baking soda with a squirt of dish soap and just enough water to make a paste. She'd spread that paste all over the greasy areas, let it sit for at least 20 minutes, then scrub with the rough side of the sponge. The baking soda acts as a gentle abrasive while the dish soap cuts the grease. Most of it would wipe away without hard scrubbing. I use this on my glass baking dishes and sheet pans. It gets them clean without scratching and without exhausting my arms. For really bad grease, let it sit longer. An hour or even overnight makes a big difference. Planting marigolds to repel pests. My grandmother's vegetable garden never got decimated by aphids or nematodes like some of the neighbors' gardens did. Her secret was marigolds. She planted them all around the edges of the garden and between rows of vegetables. Marigolds release a chemical from their roots that repels harmful nematodes in the soil, and their strong smell confuses and deters aphids, mosquitoes, and other pests. She'd plant them early in the season and let them grow thick. The bonus is that marigolds are easy to grow. They flower all summer, and they actually attract beneficial insects like ladybugs that eat the bad bugs. I plant marigolds in my garden every year now. I've noticed fewer pest problems and haven't had to use any chemical sprays. Just buy a couple of seed packets or flats of starts. Plant them near your tomatoes and peppers, and let them do their job naturally. Using baking soda to deodorize the closet. Closets develop musty smells, especially if they're closed up most of the time. Instead of hanging one of those scented air fresheners that just masks the smell, my grandmother would put an open box of baking soda on the closet floor or on a shelf. She'd poke holes in the top of the box so air could circulate through it. Baking soda absorbs odors naturally instead of covering them up. She'd replace it every 2 or 3 months. If she wanted a light scent, she'd add a few drops of lavender oil to the baking soda. I do this in all my closets and even in the linen closet. Everything smells clean and neutral. No artificial fragrance, no stale air, just fresh-smelling clothes and linens. It costs about $1 per closet and lasts for months. So there you have it, 30 household hacks that have been working for generations, long before we had specialized products for every single problem. My grandmother didn't need Pinterest or YouTube to figure this stuff out. She just paid attention, used what she had, and passed it along. The thing is, most of these tricks work better than what we buy in stores today, and they cost almost nothing. I've saved hundreds of dollars using these instead of running to the store every time something needs cleaning or fixing. So here's what I want to know. Which of these are you going to try this week? And did your grandmother have any tricks I didn't cover? Leave a comment and share your family's wisdom. If this helped you, share it with someone who'd appreciate it. And subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.